I'm Jacquelyn Markham, Professor of Liberal Arts, and I would like to welcome you to our ePoster presentation. Thank you for joining Dr. Michael Cooper, Associate Professor of English, and myself for this brief presentation as we highlight best practices for design and delivery of a culturally responsive online classroom. First, I would like to share a definition of the culturally responsive classroom based on our research. The concept is most often associated with Geneva Gay in her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching, Theory, Research, and Practice from the year 2000. Gay's definition asks instructors to make use of the cultural capital of our diverse online classes to co-construct dynamic learning environments where passive students become active. According to Geneva Gay, a key word for best practice in a culturally responsive classroom is validation. Dynamic classrooms that capitalize on students' diversity first validate the students' experiences, knowledge, and perspectives. One relevant activity already in place at Ashford University's online classes, creating community and introductions on the discussion board, contributes to validation. This opportunity for getting to know more about the diverse life experiences of our students also allows instructors to ask pointed questions that might reveal language and technology skills and remind instructors of implicit biases, for example, to names. Studies show that professors at the doctorate level are prone to bias against African American, Latino, Latina, Indian, or Chinese names in favor of Caucasian sounding names. Putting forth effort to learn students' complex identities helps to validate their perspective and experiences. For example, during introductions in LIB 202, Women, Culture, and Society, from which most of my examples come today, I asked students to select a favorite creative woman in any area of the arts. Gay promotes choice as a way of learning authentically, and results of my question are not surprising. African American students tend to choose women like Ava DuVernay, whose accolades include the first Black female director to have a film nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture. Others might choose outrageously popular performers like Rihanna, Oprah, or Alicia Keys, or a pioneer rapper, Lauryn Hill. An obvious example is a South African student who chose a South African writer, while another student chose Audrey Assad, who performs in Christian and electronic pop venues, while students with a Latina background select creative women like Jennifer Lopez and Shakira from Colombia. Clearly, giving students a choice reveals their diversity as they co-create a dynamic environment that celebrates it. Another teaching practice of a culturally responsive online classroom is Gay's concept of empowerment. Empowerment in this context translates to academic competence, personal confidence, and courage. Again, encouraging choice on a weekly discussion board, students are asked to research contemporary creative women they have not heard of before and to discuss her contributions to culture. By the time week 5 of the class, students go beyond popular figures, and also I have provided resources such as the National Museum of Women in the Arts database to explore. Although choice is encouraged, in designing the course, instructors must develop a knowledge base to create culturally responsive alternatives. Researchers recommend media diversification in the selection and use of images, videos, and anecdotes. Again, in LIB 202, Women, Culture, and Society, Course content and student assignments utilize extensive media. All of these images come from my class. Through diverse imagery and video, students learn from about cultural identity, racism, gender bias, and the intersection of art and social change. They gain confidence and an appreciation for successful women of all races, such as Joy Harjo, the first Native American female U.S. Poet Laureate. They learn the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was created by Maya Lin, a young Asian woman, and they see art that explores cultural identity and racism in the artists like Carrie Mae Weems. These discoveries help students learn authentically, and choice allows students of all backgrounds, perspectives, and skills to not only co-construct culturally responsive online class, but to become empowered by gaining confidence and excelling academically. And now Dr. Michael Cooper looks at curriculum redesign for a culturally responsive class.
Thank you, Jacquelyn. Two other categories of culturally responsive teaching are comprehensive learning and emancipatory learning. With comprehensive learning, we try to educate the whole learner by helping students of color maintain identity and connections with their ethnic backgrounds and communities, develop a sense of community and camaraderie and shared responsibility. On the other hand, we have emancipatory learning. Emancipatory learning releases the intellect of students of color from constraining manacles of mainstream canons of knowledge and ways of knowing. The word canon is actually apropos in my example of how to design a curriculum that elicits cultural responses. This year, the English program revised ENG 301, American Literature to 1865. Before that revision, the class was very traditional in its approach in that it centered on canonized authors. So there was Poe, Melville, Emily Dickinson, Thoreau, and Emerson, all the familiar staples. Fortunately, contemporary trends in literary studies actually encourages the inclusion of a greater diversity of writers. So as lead of the ENG 301 revision team, I saw this scholarly trend as an opportunity to generate some culturally responsive content. The ENG 301 final paper is redesigned for a comprehensive and emancipatory learning experience. In the revised summative, students make a case for including a relatively unknown author into the American literary canon. Students are presented with a list of American authors who aren't considered canonized despite the merit of their literature. It's important to note that these unknown or heretofore undiscovered authors are authors of color and/or women, which also happen to be two of the highest enrolled demographics in ENG 301 historically. Thus, students in this course are actively creating knowledge that is culturally responsive. Even if they select an author outside of their own demographics, they are still using their own capital to help reconstruct American tradition. So with comprehensive learning, particularly that which seeks to develop a sense of community, camaraderie, and shared responsibility, we think that the new ENG 301 final assignment is something that is clearly aligned to these cultural responsive pedagogical tactics that Jacquelyn and I have been talking about. Now in the new ENG 301 final paper, students revise that work, receiving 2 rounds of feedback from the instructor, and then they upload a final polished draft into Portfolium, where they can return to their work for future revision or even possible publication. So through these means, we've devised a curriculum where students produce scholarship that reshapes the American canon. They aren't only completing an assignment here, but reshaping their future research interests. Community is built in the discussion forum, and I should note that many of the discussions are now designed to facilitate the summative assignment's goals, and students are cultivating the sense of shared responsibility. And in terms of emancipatory learning, that which releases the intellect of students of color from the constraining manacles of a mainstream canons of knowledge and ways of knowing. Essentially, ENG 301's final paper forwards a notion that American canon lacks ethnic diversity, and it belongs to all scholars, and thus should represent the diverse range of demographics that participate in creating and sustaining this part of American culture. I should note that ENG 301 is the first class in the English program course sequence. So no matter what their cultural backgrounds might be, the adult learners that are taking this class are still shaping their identities as scholars. They're forging them, essentially, with that first class that they're taking in their major. So it's really our hope that the students in our program will now build off of this knowledge as they matriculate and become a kind of more culturally responsive and culturally responsible scholar. So let's end this ePoster session with a challenge. Here are a few questions that you might consider when implementing a culturally responsive design into your own curriculum. Think in terms of student success and retention, because this culturally responsive learning is really trying to tap into students' personal interests and their own identities as scholars. So on behalf of Dr. Jacquelyn Markham, I want to thank you for attending this ePoster session. I'm Dr. Michael Cooper. I'm going to go ahead and include our email addresses on this slide. So if you want to contact us with questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to do so. Thank you, everyone.